Hello, everyone. This is The Business Buzz, a collaboration between 9 News and the Denver Business Journal to bring you news, perspective, and insights on what's happening in business, the economy, and the policies that can affect us all. I'm Ryan Frazier, 9 News business expert and CEO of Frazier Global, here with Ed Sealover, senior reporter with the Denver Business Journal. We bring you a few topics each show that matter to the business world and matter to you. Today we have 3 topics. Ed, should we get going?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Topic 1. Could the decades-long Colorado liquor wars reach a peace accord? The Liquor Advisory Group, created through executive order by the governor, a group of 30 individuals representing businesses and trade associations, have begun a year-long effort to find consensus on modernizing Colorado's complex alcohol sales laws. Ed, you're all over this story. Give us the rundown.
Well, this really goes back to 2008 when the legislature decided to allow liquor stores to open on Sunday. Ever since then, everybody has said, well, if they got that, I can get this. And you've seen every bit of the industry clawing for more and more and really fighting against each other. Now, in 2016, we had what was called the Great Compromise. That was one that allowed groceries to open more than one liquor store if they bought out some local liquor stores. It allowed them to sell full-strength beer starting in 2019 for the first time. That did not settle anything. And after all the oxygen is sucked out of the room for years and years of the legislature, Governor Polis finally decided, forget this. We are going to sit everyone down, and they got 30 people who are representing various segments of the industry together to try to talk through and say, how can we make laws so that maybe our spirits industry, our wine industry, our beer industry, and a whole bunch of distributors and retailers can actually agree on one way to move forward.
So, if I'm sitting at home and, I'm a consumer of alcoholic beverages, or even not, right? I care about my community. What are some of the possible changes that we could hear about over the course of the next year? And frankly, are they really needed?
Well, are they needed is the question that you're going to ask the people on that panel, and you're going to get 30 different answers to that question. But some of the things we could be looking at, delivery. I think delivery has become a whole new issue since the pandemic came around. People didn't see the need for restaurants to deliver liquor with their orders back in 2019 even. And I think there's going to be questions whether they should be able to do that, whether breweries, whether distilleries, whether everyone should have direct delivery capacity, or whether or not that is really going outside of the liquor laws. There's been a long-running debate over whether it's a good idea that we shut down every bar in this state at 2 a.m., which, especially in a place like Lodo, can often lead to confrontations and violence when everybody is spilling out at once. Maybe extending it to 4 a.m., maybe forgetting the closing time. That's going to be something that's talked about. Even things that are maybe as business focused and archaic as the types of licenses. There are 12 different types of licenses out there, from brew pubs to taverns to restaurants to hotel liquor licenses. Maybe it's time to streamline some of that, and that can actually help some of these places which are struggling right now and have been trying to bring crowds back in to be able to operate more efficiently.
I just hope that, through this process, when you bring these collection of stakeholders together, that they truly have a representative voice of, say, the customer, in terms of what does the customer really want? Because at the end of the day, I believe you empower the customer to give them choice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they come before employees I say that everybody has a stake in this. But I just want to make sure when you have a group like this of 30, that they truly have a representative voice of the customers they serve, who are looking for more flexibility or looking for more choices, or who want to keep it more contained because they're worried about some of the side effects associated with the use of alcohol in our community. But making sure those voices are represented, I think, is absolutely essential, and I just hope that's a part of this process.
Well, I'm not sure that there was a customer representative as one of the 30, and you could look at the division of who got on here and there are liquor stores of various sizes and whatnot, but in some way the customer is always represented because each of these 30 groups are thinking of their own customer. Now, we do have some public safety representatives on there as well to make sure this is not going to be a free-for-all for alcohol sales right now. But I think that is one of the questions you've hit on there is, can everybody get beyond their own fiefdom? Can the spirits industry think about what's good for everyone? Can the retail store industry think about what's good for liquor stores and grocery stores at the same time? I don't know. A lot of people think this is going to be an exercise in banging your head against the wall. But they're going to have a year to go over this, and they're going to meet and they're going to talk about various things that matter to them, and they're going to see where they can get consensus. And if they do, in 2024, we're going to see probably a slew of bills, not one omnibus bill, but a slew of bills come from this, suggesting here's how we modernize our liquor laws. And if they can't get consensus, Well, we go back to what we've been doing for 16 years, fighting every year.
I guess we'll see. The long and short of it is, over the course of the next year, these folks are going to bring, as you said, Ed, those recommendations forward for the 2024 legislative session. So I guess we'll be having to watch and hear and learn and see what all they come to in terms of proposals or hopefully solutions that actually work for the stakeholders. I think it's time to move to topic 2, which is new ways for employers who are working to recruit and retain their workforce. Employers are having to reimagine recruitment, retention, and the future of work, according to a recent article out from the DBJ, ranging from in-house educational and career advancement programs to unique work week setups to a refocus on mission-based jobs. Ed, tell us more.
Well, thank you. And just to display, there we go, the article that ran last week. What I've been hearing in covering economic development for the past year and a half is we can't find workers. How on earth are we going to find workers? And what that led me to do is to say, well, what's working, what's not? And talking to employers in various industries about what they're doing differently these days. And what we found is there is still struggle out there. Nobody said, I have the solution here. But everyone says, I've done this, I've done that, and we are trying these things differently. And just to go through a few of them that you started to name here, in-house education is something I hear from a number of places. A place like Encore Electric, for example, has 100 different courses that employees can take. Everything from kind of helping their skill sets on the job to things like public speaking and personal finance to help them go up in their careers or in their personal lives. I hear a lot of different things about scheduling too. Sage Hospitality is one that its downtown hotels, the Maven and the Rally, recently went to 4-day work weeks for everyone, both their hourly and their salaried staff. And they talk about how hard it can be to schedule that, but how gratifying it can be to the employees to do that, and how they've seen a retention rate in an industry that loses people left and right. You've seen things like really offering more work-life balance. And work-life balance is a euphemism that sometimes is true and sometimes isn't true. But I talked to a company like Power Takeoff, which works with utilities to create demand-side management programs. And they're talking about giving 41 days off to people in their first year, and then going up from there. And that extends it just beyond, personal days, but volunteer days that they may be able to take, and getting more quickly to time off at your 5-year stance, where you can take longer periods as well. These are all things that people are looking at saying, our employees need something different. They don't just want to go to work anymore. They want to go to a place that understands them and where they can make a difference.
Yeah, and I think this whole conversation around the health, safety, and well-being of the workforce, by the way, an ESG issue we'll talk about one of these days, which is very important to retention and attracting, the talent of today, really speaks to where we are at as a society. I mean, times have really changed, with the pandemic and the move to more remote work and the ability to tighten up labor shortages. I think employers are having to have these conversations more and more about how do we make ourselves more attractive, a place people want to be, a place people want to work, where they feel fulfilled, speaking to mission and purpose, which also brings me to a McKinsey survey I recently read. Actually, it was from, I think, last year, that found that 80% of Gen Z talent want to work for an employer that is purpose-driven, with a 2.8 times greater retention rate when they feel like they are working for someone or a company that has purpose, which I think speaks to, again, where companies are headed, where they know they have to go, given the changes that are happening in our society.
Absolutely. I'm going to give a good example that I found here. Terumo BCT, this is out in Lakewood. They're a worldwide manufacturing company for blood technologies. And before the pandemic, they used to make pitches like, you can come here, you can have a full career. You get benefits, you get 40-hour days. It's a very clean atmosphere to work in. And during the early days of the pandemic, they were finding 80% of the people they brought in weren't even completing their training periods at that point. They were just seeing workers that didn't want to work anymore. And they changed their pitch. How do we go out and find people? We're going to talk about our mission. We're going to talk about how we were one of the first ones on the front line of the pandemic, putting out blood tests and putting out technologies that help people get through this pandemic. And they said that has really helped. They're now getting, it's still a tough time. They're saying that 30% of people still kind of duck out early, but they're doing so much better in keeping people right now.
And I got to ask you this, because you've talked to so many of business leaders in this space about how things are changing. Have they given you any other sense of what other things we can expect, or how this might further evolve in terms of, continuing to, I won't say the war on talent, but the ability to be attractive and be a place people want to come and work?
Yeah, and I think this is another natural extension of the pandemic, and that is the idea of where you're working from. I think we've understood over the past 3 years, you don't have to be in the office all the time. And for some people, that's a hybrid atmosphere they want. For some people, they want to come back. For some folks, like the city of Fort Collins, they're saying, you actually have a choice. We will outfit your office, or we will outfit your home as your primary office. For those people who can work remotely, you just have to choose one of them and stay there. But people are going to be a lot more flexible about these things. I think we're also seeing that people want to understand who's not in the workforce now and how you get that talent back. And it's not just, hey, I'm going to go to Career Day and advertise this anymore. Someone like Elevations Credit Union has a returnship program. Instead of looking for the interns from school, they're going out to find people who have left the workforce, mothers who left during the pandemic, maybe people who have sold businesses in recent years and saying, here, would you like to come back? Here, we know you have the skills. Let's bring you back in this way. So everyone's trying something different out there, and nobody has found that golden answer yet, but everyone's getting a little bit farther with what they're doing.
And absolutely, and I'll just say this speaks to the long term. This is not just a short-term thing. This is about long-term value creation. So the ability to attract and retain workforce is a key component. Any business leader, any person who runs a company knows that. And it's very important that they figure out ways in which to get people back in the workforce, keep people in their company so they can continue to create value for all of their stakeholders, not just their shareholders. So let's move on. Topic 3. The intersection of business and politics, one of our favorite areas to talk about, Denver's mayoral race and its implications for business. The 2023 Denver mayoral election will be held this coming April to elect a new mayor for Denver. With at least 23 declared candidates, it's looking to be a crowded race to lead our capital city. Ed, how might this election impact the business climate?
How doesn't it impact the business climate? In many ways, there's going to be a range of things people are talking about, but business is at the heart of all of them. For example, every candidate is talking about public safety and homelessness right now. Well, public safety and homelessness became an issue when downtown employers stopped being able to attract employees back to their offices because they suddenly became scared of what was going on down there. Everyone's got an idea of how to clean things up, how to cut crime, and how to get people into housing, which is so desperately needed right now. You're also going to see things like the talk about transportation. How do you get around Denver? It's a growing city. It's a city that's more crowded these days. How are we going to make sure that people can live near transportation? How are we going to make sure there's a good transportation system around? And it gets down to the level, too, of how do you run a business in Denver? Regulations, expenses, all of these have gone up. And I think some of the candidates are really starting to talk about, okay, what do we do? What do we do to speed up what is a very broken permitting process in the city of Denver right now? What do we do to make sure that people, especially small businesses and entrepreneurs, can come in and can thrive, which is what this city was built upon over the last decade, but it's getting harder and harder and is moving people to the suburbs now.
Right. I think to like the vision that was put out by Pena, sort of reimagine, Denver, or Michael Hancock, who talked about One Denver, I believe, in his first term. Have any of the candidates offered noteworthy or a set of economic policies to elevate Denver's attractiveness?
Well, again, that is going to be in the eye of the beholder, just like, how liquor is going to be moving us forward. But you're seeing people that are starting to come out with some pretty big steps here. State Senator Chris Hansen, one of the candidates, one of the 3 current legislators that's in the race, has come out with an idea that we need to reformulate our transportation around essentially transportation-oriented development. That we need to, whenever we're thinking about bus lines and development, we need to think about them together so that people can actually jump on a bus if they live along Colfax and get to their jobs rather than have to figure out how to afford a car right now. You see someone like Trini Rodriguez, who has said, I'm going to declare a state of emergency on homelessness, which is going to allow the city to take broad sweeping efforts. And when most people talk about homelessness, they're not talking about, well, let's just sweep everyone out of here. They're saying, look, we need to clean up the camps that are growing up across the city, but we need to figure out ways to get them into housing, and we need to get them services right away. Almost really expanding on some things that Mayor Michael Hancock has done. And then you're going to see things like, everyone's got their idea about business. I'll give one candidate, Andy Rougeau, a shout out. He's talked about, look, we can move move up permitting if we just make some of these things easier. Let's make it easier to zone for both multifamily and retail in the same spot. That's going to move our development along. It's going to need less touches from the permitting department. So I think everyone's going to have something to put out there, and I apologize to the 21 candidates I didn't just name with proposals there. But you're going to see everyone try to grasp that thin space where they can say, look at me, look at me. And the good thing about that is voters are going to hear about a lot of ideas when people are going to be begging you to pay attention to them.
You know, and I think at the end of the day, I think there's going to be some fundamental questions around. Look, I run a boutique business, and I operate in Denver and Aurora and all across the country, and really Aurora, really. But you know, one of the fundamental questions I think that these candidates and the voters will be having to speak to or have questions about is, you know, without cutting corners, with providing a level playing field. You know, we all want to play by the rules. You know, how do you make it easier to do business in Denver? Because, you know, Denver's the capital city. Everybody wants to be in the Denver metro area, but how do you make sure they want to be in Denver proper and locate their businesses or keep their businesses? And it has to be a part of that conversation has to be, without cutting corners, making it easier and simpler. You know, more efficient for businesses to operate in our city. I would think that has to be fundamentally one of the most important parts of the conversation these candidates have to have. And again, you mentioned a couple, but not all. There's so many that we left out. Maybe for a future business brief we can talk to. And besides, it's early days still, but Denver voters in the business community have a lot to learn about these potential leaders and their plans. Ed, what else can we be on the lookout for over the next few months?
I think you're going to see, very importantly, in the next month or two, who's going to stay in. These 23 candidates now have to collect signatures. They can't just declare. They've got to get out there and do the legwork. That's probably going to knock out about 7 or 8 candidates to begin with. And then we're going to see who figures out they're running in the same lane and maybe decides, well, I'm going to drop out and I'm going to back you instead. One of the key things to remember about this election is that there will be a runoff unless someone somehow gets 50% of the vote among 23 candidates. And so the question is, who has that lane to the runoff? You don't have to win in April. You have to finish among the top 2. And I think people will speak directly to the policies that set them apart from the rest of the field when that comes about here. So watch closely as people who are now jumping in saying, I want to improve public safety, I want to clean up homelessness, start to develop more of these specific proposals. Because I think that's going to be the difference. If they're not developing more specific proposals, they may not be in that final 2.
Ed, I think that's all for now. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on the Business Buzz. For 9 News, I'm Ryan Frazier, and for Ed Sealover with the Denver Business Journal. Till next time.